Good evening. Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Who we got in here this evening? Hold tight, chicken and waffles. Mushy, Debiaka, LD, Ezekiel, supersized fries, Rich Franklin, Action Pop, Action Popcast, Adeola Depot, the great Adeola Depot, big up. Mark Hatch, Striker, Mr. Luca, of course, Wayne, Dominic A, David Fisher, Trolls Are Bad. You got Al Vision, is that how you pronounce your name? Big up. Is it Al Vision or AI Vision? What's up, man? Nice. What's up, Hatman? Nice trap, by the way. Do you see Tony Yoka being signed a contract to fight Ajit Kabayel in a video? What's your thoughts on the rematch? Is that fight done? Is that what you're saying? Tony Yoka to fight Ajit Kabayel, is that Kabayel's comeback fight in Germany? Call it a comeback fight, but you know, stay busy fight, however you want to describe it. Big up Elmore. Carlos, yes. Glad some of you guys enjoying the beats. Mr. Lucas says, DK dude was totally goosed. Will be far faster on his feet, better hand speed too, faster head movement. Yeah, I guess people are talking about the Joseph Parker weight that he came in at against Fabio Wardley. Far too heavy, 262. Should have come in no higher than 250 in my opinion, maybe 252, very low 250s. So we're going to talk about some boxing this evening, with the main topic of conversation being this bizarre news. Netflix are apparently exploring a Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao rematch in 2026. Here's the headline from Ring Magazine, Mike Coppinger. Sources. You know, Mike Coppinger's got better sources than Ragu and Domio. Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao rematch being explored by Netflix. A Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao rematch more than 10 years after the first meeting is being explored to take place next year in another Netflix boxing event, sources tell The Ring. When they fought in 2015, Mayweather outpointed Pacquiao in a fight 5+ years in the making. The event shattered revenue records, generating 4.6 million pay-per-view buys, the most of all time, along with a record gate of $72.2 million in Las Vegas. Overall, the event approached $600 million in revenue. Okay, it was a big box office bonanza, but it was a fight that, personally, I was not looking forward to because I knew it was way past its sell-by date. So if I weren't looking forward to their first fight 10 years ago, you can imagine how I'm feeling about a potential rematch between these two OAPs at this stage. They need to knock it on the head. And you do wonder, you know, I've heard Eddie Hearn speculate about Floyd Mayweather's financial situation. He claims that Mayweather doesn't really have the kind of money that he claims to. I've got no idea whether Eddie Hearn's onto something or not, but you do wonder why a guy like Mayweather, who has generated all this money, would still be partaking in boxing matches. Maybe he just doesn't have any other way to fulfill what he feels is his purpose in life? I don't know. But it does make you wonder, especially with something like this, coming back for a potential Manny Pacquiao rematch next year. And this is being explored by Netflix. Now, you guys know that I've been hoping that Netflix stay in boxing, big time boxing. I was very happy that they picked up the Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez fight. I was hoping that would be the start of something, but this is not what I had in mind by way of Netflix remaining in boxing. This isn't quite in the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson realm, but it's not too far off. So Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao fought back in 2015. At the time, Mayweather was 38, Manny Pacquiao was 36. So they were both getting on, to say the least, 10 years ago. Now Mayweather is 58, Manny Pacquiao's 46, there or thereabouts. And these guys are going to fight again? What in the world is going on? And why would Netflix be interested in that? Maybe they think the casual audience, the nostalgia, so on and so forth, it will drive subscriptions, sign-ups, and so on. What do you guys think? Would this work for Netflix? Would they do good business on this between these two faded warriors? Or are they barking up the wrong tree? Big up Ben Wilson, big up Striker. Indeed, what happened to Mayweather versus Mike Tyson? A silly, gimmicky fight indeed. What happened to that? Has that fallen by the wayside? Then they're looking to have this Pacquiao rematch instead? Or is Mayweather looking to do both? That's the thing, Mark Hatch. Mark Hatch says, Floyd has been fighting YouTubers. I think Manny can take the win now. That's what maybe the fight will be sold on. Because the Manny Pacquiao fans have been desperate for their guy to beat Floyd Mayweather since he lost that first fight, right? So maybe they think because Manny's been active in real fights against proper boxers and Floyd Mayweather hasn't, that now's his chance. Excuse me, did I say 58? 48. Excuse me, Kieran Malcolm. If I said 58, yeah, Floyd Mayweather's now 48, not 58. Mike Tyson's more like 58. Evil Uncle Phil says, barking up the wrong tree, it's not a fight that will interest enough casuals. I certainly hope not, but I do hope that Netflix remain involved in boxing. So, how many of you guys remember this video? 10 years ago on my channel, still up. 10 fights I prefer over Mayweather versus Pacquiao. It's a very short video, but like I say, I named 10 fights back then which I preferred over Mayweather versus Pacquiao. Bear in mind, Mayweather versus Pacquiao hadn't happened yet. I think it was taking place later on that year. And one of the fights I named in this video was Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte, which also hadn't yet happened. I think it had been signed and announced. It might have been anyway. And yeah, I said I preferred Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte over Mayweather Pacquiao. Bear in mind, AJ and Dillian Whyte were just prospects at the time. And I did catch quite a bit of heat, quite a bit of backlash for that. And some people were saying, oh, you're just being a contrarian. You're not serious. How could you possibly prefer those two prospects fighting each other over Mayweather Pacquiao? No, I wasn't being a contrarian. I wasn't saying it for shock value or just to go against the grain for the sake of it whatsoever. I was saying it because when it comes to exciting fights, you're more likely to get one if you've got two young guys who are a bit wet behind the ears. They're both trying to prove themselves. They're both maybe got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, or at least one of them has. That's when there's a higher chance of a good fight. When you've got two old veterans who've been around the block 100 times, who've been champion. I mean, in the case of Manny Pacquiao, he'd been knocked out badly by Marquez in their full fight, knocked out cold. So he wasn't as aggressive anymore subsequent to that. And you got Mayweather, who, although he was a brilliant fighter, at 147, he wasn't exactly Mr. Exciting, was he? So I was expecting a pretty dull affair. And that's obviously what we got. A dull affair, an unexciting contest. And that is why beforehand I said I'm looking forward to these various other fights more than Mayweather-Pacquiao. Some of the other fights I mentioned were, I think, Sergey Kovalev versus Artur Beterbiev, because that was a possibility back then. Also Sergey Kovalev versus Adonis Stevenson. There was a number of fights I mentioned. But yeah, I caught a lot of flack back then for saying that. But again, if I was looking forward to AJ White more than Mayweather-Pacquiao 10 years ago, you already know how I feel about a rematch between these two in 2026. Big up Gaz for the super chat. He says, what's good, Hatman? Prime McCall versus Prime Mercer. The Battle of the Iron Jaws. I would go with Prime Mercer. Mercer had quicker hands. He was a bit more versatile. Both guys had good jabs. I'd say Mercer had a slightly better jab. So yeah, I'll go with Prime Mercer on points, but it'd be a hell of a war. Yeah, Prime Mercer on points. Linkage says, how much money is enough? Indeed. Yes, hold tight. The entire country of Jamaica going through it right now. My own country's been through similar situations many times. So hold tight. Everyone back a yard. Mr. Lucas said, did Mayweather have the 3 belts after the Pacquiao fight? I think the Pacquiao fight was for the WBA, WBC, and was it the IBF or WBO? I think the Ring magazine was on it. It weren't undisputed anyway, but I think there might have been 3 belts. Not the 4 belts. Big up 4 Fox for the super chat. He says, hi, your Floyd Pac-Man vid around 2015 was the first vid of yours I ever watched on YouTube. Oh, damn. A subscriber ever since. Superb, insightful, and educational content as always. Thanks. And the best to you, Ali. Big up. And thank you very much for the super chat. Much appreciated. And I'm glad you've been enjoying the content over the years. And I appreciate the support. Much respect. Coffee says, is the guy with a birth certificate in tonight? You know, that phony birth certificate thing, he eventually admitted what that actually was. Basically, it's some type of printout from Tyson Fury's doctor. So it's not a birth certificate at all. You know how your doctor's got your name and age and date of birth, place of birth, your medical records, basically. That's what it was. It was some type of printout or scan of a Tyson Fury medical record, not his birth certificate. And of course, when you change your name by deed poll, if that's what Tyson Fury's actually done, changing his middle name Luke, or what would allegedly have then been his first name Luke to his middle name, and Tyson from his previously middle name to his first name, if indeed he's done that, then that will be reflected on his medical records as well. You know, you just tell the NHS, yep, I've swapped my middle name and first names around. Do you want to reflect that on my medical records? Okay, no problem. Do that in 2 seconds. The birth certificate doesn't look anything like what that guy posted. Striker says the birth certificate drama yesterday was classic. Thomas said Brooke had the IBF at the time. Is that right? Was Brooke IBF champion back then? Damn. How time flies. It doesn't feel like 10 years ago that Brooke was IBF champion. Jeez. Is that how long ago it was? I hope you're mistaken. I hope you're mistaken because I'm aging way too rapidly here. Time is accelerating. It feels like it. Action Popcast says Floyd wrote the playbook Fury used to not fight people. Striker says that's why fanboys are a necessary evil. Who else can give you that kind of entertainment? Wayne says I was there. Mark Odell says Usyk's next opponent is Howard Foster. So if this bizarre circus fight, the rematch between Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao were to happen next year, how do you guys see it going? Do you think Pacquiao would be in good stead because of the fact he's actually been fighting real fighters and would have enough of an advantage over Floyd Mayweather now? He is the younger guy too. Or do you think that Floyd would still be able to get the W? Triple R says Brooke won it in 2014 against Porter. He had it for a while. He had injuries in and out of the ring, so the IBF allowed him. Yeah, thank God. I didn't want to believe that Brooke was champion 10 years ago. Oh, he was that's 11 years. What am I talking about? Oh, my God. My brains are scrambled here. 11 years ago. Brooke won it in 2014? That doesn't feel like 11 years ago. I was making videos then talking about Kell Brook fighting Sean Porter. 11 years ago, bro. Action Popcast says, I see an exhibition, not a lot of action and overhyping commentary. Yeah, would it be an exhibition or would it be a legitimate professional fight? Declan says, by some way, I don't know, but Mayweather will get the W. Yeah, we're all getting old fast encircled. If you're in your 30s or 40s and up, you're definitely feeling it. Rich Franklin says, my money's on Floyd still. Fee Khabib says, wasn't Mayweather fighting Tyson? Where did that go? Yeah. Supposedly he was fighting Tyson. Was that going to be a Netflix thing as well? I'm not sure. Maybe Netflix. Maybe it was proposed to Netflix. I'm just speculating here. And they said, nah, we don't want to see Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao on Netflix. Maybe there was too much of a backlash following the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight on that platform. So maybe they're thinking Mayweather Pacquiao would be more competitive and more real, and it would deliver as far as subscriber satisfaction. Kyle says this fight is a waste of time. I think most of us would agree with that. Fernie G says, tell me about it, Hatman. High school feels like 15 years ago. I graduated in 99, 26 in actuality. Yeah. I graduated high school. Well, in the UK, you don't really graduate high school because you don't get held back the way you do in the United States if you don't pass whatever exams. But I finished high school in the mid-90s. In the mid-90s, bro. And you know, there's this kind of meme online about how people back in the 80s and the 70s used to look a lot older when they were young. So, for example, there's one video which has been circulating on Instagram and other social media platforms where they've got an old school camcorder and they're going around a high school in the United States I think sometime in the 80s. And the comments are all saying that these people look like they're in their late 20s or 30s, but somehow they're high school kids. And there's also like pictures of married couples who were 35, 40, and they look like the equivalent of 50 or 60-year-olds today. I think part of the reason that people back then used to look older is because of the way they dressed. There wasn't a concerted effort being made by most people once they reached past the age of 30 to still look young. People would embrace growing old. Do you know what I mean? Whereas today, everyone's trying to look young before their years. Is that the right way to describe it? Including myself. I'm not trying to look super old out here. Fee Khabib says Netflix has a market cap of $467 billion. I don't get the angle of burning money on boxing matches. Jack says, how did your date go, Hatman? It was okay. Can't say it was thrilling. It was okay. I should be seeing that one again on Thursday. Triple R says, I'm 27, but 17 feels 5 years ago, not 10. Big up CJ. Striker says, I finished mid-90s just when the internet was starting. Yeah, the internet to me, well, back then, my perception of the internet was, I don't know whether this will ever take off. I didn't know anything about computers and all that type of stuff other than playing video games on them. But it was like the realm of super nerds, the internet. Mid-late 90s. It was only super nerds who even understood it or used it. The average person was not using the internet in the mid-90s. And even up until the early 2000s, most homes did not have access to the internet. People were using or starting to use internet cafes and whatnot. People really didn't have internet on their phones yet. Very primitive internet. You could barely view a web page, take a minute or something for the page to load. Big up 4Fox for the super chat. He says, when Roy Jones Jr. was in his prime at middleweight, which all-time fighters at middleweight, if any, would you pick to beat him just for fun? I'm 41 and I was absolutely shocked when he lost to Tava. Big up 4Fox. Which all-time middleweights would I pick to beat Roy Jones? I wouldn't pick Monzon to beat him. I wouldn't pick Hagler to beat him. Roy Jones beat Hopkins at middleweight. Would I pick somebody like Jermaine Taylor? No. Is Jermaine Taylor even an all-time middleweight? Would I pick somebody like Golovkin to beat him? No. Not a prime Roy Jones. Or Canelo? No. Maybe, because styles make fights, right? Perhaps there are people who I think could have beaten Gerald McClellan. Other middleweights, that is. But McClellan might have had the best chance, in my opinion, of beating Roy Jones, because he beat him in the amateurs. He knew him. Came up in the amateurs with him. I would say maybe McClellan or Tommy Hearns might have had the best chance against Roy Jones at 160 pounds. Long, wiry guys. Sharp, precise punching, particularly with Tommy Hearns. Those two guys might have had the best chance against him. And again, boxing is rock, paper, scissors, as Dwyer likes to say. Marvin Hagler obviously weighed Hearns in. Done him in 3 rounds. And yet I would pick Roy Jones to beat Marvin Hagler. So it swings and roundabouts, innit? Big up 4Fox for that super chat. Interesting question. And indeed, I was shocked to my boots when Roy Jones got knocked out by Antonio Tarver. That was shocking. That was nearly as shocking as when Mike Tyson got knocked out by Buster Douglas. Some people talking about the Tom Aspinall eye poke. Yeah, eye pokes always look worse in slow-mo. There you go. Action Popcast is attesting to what I was talking about earlier. He says, I'm 41 next week and look a lot younger. Well, my dad was 40, he looked 65 and still looks 65 now, now that he is. Also, you know, in the industrial age, people lived harder lives. Men were doing a lot more manual labor jobs and whatnot. And especially in working class communities, there wasn't as much awareness as far as the dangers of smoking and drinking and whatnot. So that might have aged people a lot, as well as, you know, the hard labor and stress and what have you. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, how do you think how do you think AI will stunt brain development with the new youths? They don't even write or have to think about their homework. I think we got a dumb generation incoming. That's an interesting comment there. Because I've been more thinking about AI and the implications for, let's say, dissidents. The way that malevolent governments in any part of the world could frame political dissidents for crimes that they haven't done by using AI. Because the AI is getting so convincing now. Do you know what I mean? Just imagine how malevolent, let's call them actors, could frame people for things they haven't done. So I've been more thinking about that. I've been more concerned about that aspect of AI. But as far as kids learning and whatnot, I mean, you've got all these different AIs like ChatGPT. People just type in a bunch of information and it gives you all sorts of answers. I'm not as up to speed and well versed with how accurate AI is as some other people, but I've used AI obviously a few times in search engines and whatnot. Most search engines have got their own AI, and the accuracy has been a mixed bag, because sometimes AI will give you an answer that's just a load of nonsense, easily debunkable and disprovable. Do you know what I mean? So, but I get your point. Yeah, if kids start relying on AI rather than actually doing research and actually thinking, could it stunt development? I guess it could. It's an interesting world we're moving into now, isn't it? Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, AI is Joseph Goebbels' wet dream. If kids grow up without practicing their critical thinking, won't they be the easiest to fool? Absolutely they will. But to counter it, maybe some people are compelled to think critically. I feel like I always was. My whole life since I was a little kid, I was always questioning things. So I think some people are just wired that way naturally and maybe always have been, whilst other people just are willing to accept whatever their parents tell them, whatever their teachers tell them without really questioning it, whatever authority figures tell them without questioning it, whatever the status quo is. So perhaps it's those people that will be getting dumbed down through AI, but the people who are of a questioning nature, people who are intrepid, maybe they won't get dumbed down. So in a sense, maybe the split between the thinking and the unthinking won't change that much, potentially. What do you think? Big up Fight News, ATL in the house. Big up everyone in the live chat, just locking in and joining. The main topic of this stream is the head-shaking news that Netflix are exploring a Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao rematch in 2026, but we can talk about other topics as well. Kyle says reading is beautiful. Even Uncle Phil says some parents slap kids for questioning things, especially in African cultures. Coffee Guy says, I guess I need to find something interesting. The Jack says, was the date a boxing fan? I don't think so. The date was actually a medical student, a 27-year-old who's studying to be some type of doctor. I think a pediatrician or something. Action Popcast says, my son is autistic and reads all the time. Giant books and encyclopedias. I don't need AI, I just ask him. He sounds like a savant. Because an aspect of autism is many autists become obsessed with certain things, and that obsession allows them to basically become experts. Right? I've mentioned this many times before, but back in the 90s, my mom used to do a bit of childminding from home, and one of the boys she looked after was autistic. And I don't know how old he was at the time. It would have been primary school age, so I guess 9, 10. And this boy knew literally everything about Manchester United. It was unbelievable. It was like a Manchester United encyclopedia. And he was only like 10 years old or something. It was totally bizarre. Like he could have gone on Mastermind, you know them ones. It was literally that deep. He knew everything about Man United. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, I see your point. Critical thinking is a bit like punching power. You're mostly born with it, but you can improve on what you have. That's very well put. Very well put. We've got 183 concurrent viewers, only 43 likes. If we can run the likes up, people, I'll really appreciate it. It helps by way of visibility for these streams. Lukvinder Singh says 48 and getting back into gaming again. Loving the old school Xbox 360. Damn, you've been dusting off the old Xbox. Hold tight Afro Jam. He says a lot of kids love reading when young. A lot of people lose the love for reading due to socialization. Debyaka says reading isn't inherently better than TV. It's all about the quality of info and the type of learner you are. I would tend to agree with that, but you can pack a lot more information into a book with sources and stuff like that than you would in, let's say, a 90-minute documentary. That's the thing. But yeah, people learn in different ways and absorb information and process information in different ways. Some people absorb information better from reading, others absorb information better from listening or watching, so on and so forth. So yeah, there are different learning styles. Vader D says, Hammond, do you sort your comments feed by all comments rather than top comments because YouTube hides a lot of interesting ones by default? Yeah, I tend to sort it if I remember to actually select the setting. I tend to sort it by all comments rather than top comments. Oh, wow. Lego Slack says, YouTube of late does not allow me to like your live streams. This is probably the 4th in a row. Anyone else having that issue? Liking the live stream. We've got 60 likes. If we can run the likes up to at least 90, be much appreciated. Big up Matt Borgerson in the chat. He says, from the way Pac-Man looked, do you think it's very likely Floyd will lose that 0 to him? It's so hard predicting a fight like this since both guys are way past their primes. Mayweather hasn't fought a live opponent for however long it is now. Since Andre Berto, right? Was that the last proper opponent that Mayweather fought? Andre Berto? Or were the Maidana fights after the Berto fight? I forget now. It's been so long. But you get the point I'm making. So it's really hard to gauge where Mayweather's at in comparison to Pacquiao. I think it'll be a much more sloppy fight if it goes ahead. Both guys making a lot more mistakes. Both guys will be a lot slower than they were back in the days. And I don't know, will it make for maybe a more entertaining spectacle? Because their first fight was horrible. And I expected it to be horrible, but it was a horrible fight. Boring as hell. Kyle says Berto wasn't a proper opponent. Well, he was a real professional boxer. I'm talking about compared to the guys that Mayweather has been fighting over the past few years. He was a proper opponent, right? He was a top 10 ranked welterweight. The guys Mayweather's been fighting over the past few years have been influencers and kickboxers and all sorts of other people. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, do you think Mayweather Pacquiao 2 fills Raiders Stadium? I don't think so, but maybe my perception is way off because, again, as hardcore boxing fans, sometimes we can get a little out of touch with the way that casuals think and the way that casuals are feeling about certain situations. So, is that the case here? Am I a little out of touch thinking that Mayweather and Pacquiao can't fill the Raiders Stadium? Maybe they can. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, do you remember when video games first came out, people thought it would make everyone violent? That seems to have died down. What's your opinion on that? Yeah, I do remember that. There was talk in the media about the concerns that video games would make people violent, fighting games, shooting games, all that type of business. Even when there was certain school, I'm going to spell it out, SHOOTINGS, right? I don't want to mention it in case it triggers the algorithm, but when there were certain tragedies that happened in school, for example, there was one which would have been in the 90s by two boys who referred to themselves as the trench coat mafia. And they went into school and, shut the place up, unfortunately. And there was a lot of talk at the time about whether they'd been influenced by violent video games. I suspect the video games don't really influence people to become more violent. I think that what can influence or maybe exacerbate violence is more so violent music. Because there's still something unreal about video games. And also, video games might allow people to let off steam so that they don't go out and commit acts of violence for real. Do you know what I mean? If they can do it in the virtual world, it might be able to scratch an itch, for some of them anyway. I'm not saying that video games can never cause somebody to become more violent, but I'm saying in general terms, in my estimation, in my opinion, I suspect they might actually have the opposite effect. They might actually placate somebody rather than push them over the edge. So that's my take on it. But yeah, it's a very interesting question, D-Man. Very interesting question. What do you think? I think violent music is more likely to influence people down that direction, because with violent music, there's a whole culture, like promoting gang culture and street culture through music, glamorizing it in that way. And it's real people. It's not sprites in a video game. Evil Uncle Phil says, I played COD, GTA, etc. as a teenager. I never thought about emulating any of it in real life. I had the blame on video games. Or I guess you meant to say hate the blame on video games. Yeah, Debbie Arca says, no different to combat sports, video games scratch a bloodlust. Fight News says, I really don't listen to rap anymore. And me neither. Yeah, Brandon Herrera is mentioned in the incident I was alluding to. He says it was in 1999. Yeah, I didn't want to mention it by name in case it triggers the algorithm. happened a very long time ago, so maybe the algorithm won't be triggered by it, but just in case. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, with music, I totally agree. I've seen so many people try copy gangster rap personas. Never seen someone copy Kratos, though. Other than Alan Babbitt in The Ring. And it didn't go very well for him. Fight News says, Hatman, I listen to 70s and 80s R&B and blues. Yeah, I listen to a lot of 70s and 80s music as well. I barely listen to any rap. As I mentioned before, the only rap album over the past, 10 years that I've listened to fairly consistently is Warriors by MOP, which is an extremely violent album. And maybe one of the reasons that I don't listen to rap these days hardly at all is because I don't like the mindset it puts me into. In fact, I remember Shannon Briggs saying something similar. He said he stopped listening to rap because he doesn't like the mood it puts him in. And that is speaking to the potential influence it has on you to be violent, to react in certain ways. Obviously, it depends on the individual. If you're somebody with a temper, then it's probably going to have more of a negative effect on you than if you're someone that has no temper at all and you're a total pacifist by nature. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, if you're about to charge into battle with high chance of death, what's your last song? Probably something by MOP. Yeah, probably something by MOP. Something off their Warriors album. Big up Ivan. Says, big up Hatman, do you think... Oh, message retracted. I was about to read Ivan's message. Maybe he made a spelling mistake. He's going to type it again. Big up Ivan, though. And big up D-Man for the super chat. If I had to narrow it down to an MOP song from Warriors, if I was charging into battle, it might be G Building, Follow Instructions, the title track, Warriors, Ante Up. Could be any of the tracks off there. There are so many. And there was another track which wasn't on the album, but it was recorded maybe a little bit after that on some mixtape called Flatline? It was a Primo style beat. I don't think it was actually produced by Primo, but it was a Primo style beat. See, some people have called for violent music to be outlawed, like rap music and drill music, so on and so forth, to be outlawed. I understand why they would want that to happen. I don't think it should be outlawed because you still got violent movies, right? Even if you're not a violent person, you might enjoy watching a gangster movie or a horror movie or whatever the case may be. And music, in the same way, is a form of entertainment. But what I do think is that violent music shouldn't be promoted in the mainstream to the extent that it is these days. I don't think that's helpful. I think that's harmful. I mean, they literally play drill music on daytime radio. How crazy is that? Ivan says, big up Hatman, do you think people will look at or look differently on Mayweather's legacy if he loses to Pacquiao? Some people will, yes, because they want to. I personally won't, because he's just way past. It's like when Mike Tyson lost to Lennox Lewis, and that wasn't even as extreme as this would be. But when Mike Tyson lost to Lennox Lewis, to me, it didn't take anything away from Mike Tyson's legacy, because Tyson was totally washed, even though he's actually a year older than Lennox Lewis. Lewis was far better preserved than Mike Tyson was. So I didn't look at that as harming Tyson's legacy, and I didn't look at it as enhancing Lewis's legacy. So yeah, if Mayweather was to lose to Pacquiao now, I wouldn't see it personally as harming Mayweather's legacy, but a lot of other people would because they want to, because they don't like Mayweather. I don't particularly like Mayweather, but regardless of whether I like or dislike a fighter, I have to be fair. I have to be as objective as I possibly can. And objectively speaking, I could not use that to diminish Mayweather's legacy or resume if he were to lose to Pacquiao. And I couldn't do it. I don't think that would be fair. Paul Kirby says, absolutely 100% agree with music. It sets the mood. We know this. Can make a person happy or sad or hyper or angry. That's why we listen to certain music to chill or relax and certain music to gym. Indeed. Alexander says, when Lennox Lewis would walk out to Crazy Ball led by Bob, that for me was the coldest ring walk. Yeah, I used to like his ring walk. We're gonna chase them crazy ballad out of town. Chase those crazy ballers out of town. I and I build the cabin. I and I plant the corn. Didn't my people before me slave for this country? Now you look me with a scorn. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, you heard about that drill artist suspect AGB who fled to Kenya? That story was wild. No, I don't know about that. Don't know about that. The big trending topic at the moment when it comes to rappers is what happened with Gets. And I've actually just done a Patreon episode, which I was trying to upload earlier on, but for some reason the upload speed is really bad, even though I'm using Starlink and normally it's not too bad. It was only like a 1 gig video I was trying to upload to Patreon, so I'm going to upload it overnight. But I addressed the whole Gets thing on there. That's like the big news at the moment. Big up EJ Boxing Live. And just to give you a brief summary of what I think about Gets, the man's a complete idiot. He's a waste man. He's an idiot. Indeed, Kasser is calling drill dropping the names of people killed and mocking them as vile behavior, as is bragging about putting kids in junkies' houses selling hard. Indeed. It's awful. Even Uncle Phil says Gets is cooked, he deserves it though. I completely agree. I think they need to make an example of him. Because he's got previous for driving. Yeah? And he's not a young kid. Not that it would be excusable if he was a young kid, but at 41 years of age, he's supposed to know better. He's lost friends himself. Do you know what I mean? He's rich. I swear he's a millionaire. Or close to. So, why is he bombing around? I mean, at the court hearing the other day, it was revealed that he tested positive for marijuana and alcohol. And he was speeding at some ridiculous, he was going at some ridiculous speed in a residential area. At the age of 41, like, what are you doing, bruv? I mean, oh, man. The guy's an idiot. But tell me more about that drill artist, D-Man, because I'm not aware of that. D-Man says money don't buy class. Indeed, it don't. And the young man whose life he snuffed out, obviously not intentionally, but just through his stupidity and recklessness and egotism and whatnot, was a 20-year-old student from, was it Nepal? Who was, parents probably saved up for God knows how long to send him to the UK to be educated. And that happens to him. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Indeed, yeah, the victim was apparently catapulted 60 to 70 foot in the air. And Gets is just a total waste, man. And I think they need to make an example of him, yeah? Because that kind of thing obviously happens all the time. Idiots drink driving and going ridiculous speeds through residential areas. That kind of stuff happens all the time. It's just that because of who Gets is, this case is high profile. if they make an example of him in terms of the sentencing, hopefully that'll discourage other idiots from doing something similar. Because again, at the age of 41, bro, nah, you've lived long enough and you've experienced enough to know way better than to be carrying on like that. Panther says, Eubank Sr. killed someone driving and got a 2K fine. Yeah, I remember that. That was in the early 90s. That's right, yeah. Dominic K says, the drill artist went on the run after an M. The Met traced him to Kenya and extradited him. Okay. So you weren't even smart enough to go somewhere that doesn't have extradition. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, okay, suspect AGB made heaps of songs about stabbing people, then fled to Kenya after a stabbing, and Interpol caught him. There is a documentary about him. How suspect AGB was caught hiding in Kenya. Okay. Big up Angelica. Says Hatman is the GOAT. But big up D-Man for the info on that. The Box says, have you watched the Ed Gein series on Netflix? I haven't, but I actually did a Patreon episode about Ed Gein as part of my serial killer series. Angelica says, I've watched you for almost 10 years. Angelica and Ayobami. Big up, big up. Thank you for the long time support. Linkage says, that never happens, unfortunately. Some people are just complete fools. Loads of people drink drive. Wayne says, Vince McMahon, I believe, just had his reckless driving charge dropped. Paul Kirby says, what? Eubank killed someone with a car? Wow. So he cries regularly over causing brain damage to another fighter, yet never mentioned the kill. Yeah, it was the early 90s. It might have been around 91, 92 when that incident happened. I don't think it was drinking related, though. It was some kind of... I can't remember the exact circumstances of how it went down. Obviously, there was... Well, I don't think, anyway, there was any footage of it. But yeah, he hit some kind of pedestrian and whatnot. Prince Nassim was also involved in an incident where he hit someone through reckless driving, but they didn't lose their life. I think they were just badly injured or whatever. Afro Jam says one of his brethren is still on the run in Somalia. Angelica says, I want to pick your brain. Do you think we went to the moon? If yes or no, why haven't we returned to the moon? Fishy, right? What are your thoughts? I do think there's something going on with the moon that the public is not being told about. That's my suspicion. I got no proof. But I suspect there's something really weird going on up there the public are not being told about. Does that mean they never went to the moon? I've heard all the arguments from people saying that they never went because of the Van Allen belt and the technology back then couldn't have shielded the astronauts from radiation. But I've heard other people say that's not quite true because the radiation isn't consistent. At some points you could pass through it and other points you couldn't. There's the argument about the telemetry data, which has been lost. Why would NASA lose telemetry data for the greatest feat in human history? So on and so forth. Well, I'm open to the possibility that they never went. I'm also open to the possibility that they did go. All I can tell you is that I suspect there's something really weird going on. The nature of it, I couldn't tell you. Maybe it's got something to do with the nature of our reality. Is it a Stanley Kubrick 2001 type scenario where they found something inexplicable up there? You know, in 2001 where they go to the moon and there's some black monolith? I don't know. I suspect there's something really, really weird there. So whether they went or not, something weird, I suspect. Again, I got no proof. It's just my hunch and speculation based upon the behavior of the space agencies. Big up Ed Ellaby. Oh yeah, I remember that Mark Hatch. That guy was like a flyweight or something. That's right. Canelo broke some fighter's jaw because he talked to his girlfriend. Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy. And Canelo's brother took the rap. I think Canelo must have given his brother, or allegedly gave his brother a bag to take the rap for that incident. You guys remember that? That was crazy, bro. The guy was like a flyweight and he had his jaw like broken off. Alexander says, Hatman, what do you think makes a fighter like Usyk so disciplined? Where does that kind of heart and motivation come from? Well, as with most people, it's a combination of nature and nurture. Partly nature, partly nurture. I would suspect with an extraordinary person like Usyk, it's probably more nature than nurture. I think it's probably more innate, just how his personality and character is, how he's wired psychologically, neurologically. But still a combination of both, nature and nurture. Wayne says, are you old enough to remember when they banned Clockwork Orange? Yes. That movie was banned. Well, it was banned by Kubrick himself. I don't think it was ever actually banned by the British censors. I could be wrong on that, but Kubrick banned it himself, which was weird, right? Was it some kind of publicity stunt by Kubrick banning it himself? I don't know. Lego Slack says, any thoughts on the peculiar asteroid heading near Earth's orbit? I haven't heard about it. Cassar is calling, says, Clockwork Orange didn't get banned. Well, I guess you could say it got pulled by Kubrick. So banned, pulled, whatever. Because during that time, you had movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming out and, you know, all these controversial movies. And the more controversial a movie seemed, the more young people especially would want to watch it and the more people would talk about it. Remember, this is the pre-internet age. So, yeah, maybe it was a publicity stunt by Kubrick pulling the movie. Big up, Angelica, for the super chat. Interesting about the moon. Please elaborate more. I mean, if I could go up there, and I wouldn't want to go up there, but, you know, in a hypothetical scenario, if I could go up there, I'd be able to find out. But I'm somebody that's open to all sorts of possibilities. Open to the possibility that we live in a simulation. If you go up to the moon, does it reveal the fact that we live in a simulation somehow? The edges of the simulation in a Truman Show type way? Are there alien artifacts up there? You know, inexplicable things like monoliths or whatever the case may be? I'm open to all sorts of possibilities. Big up Angelica for the super chat. If you've seen the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, or if you haven't seen it, I recommend you Check it out. Also, I've been very interested in this concept, right? This idea that human consciousness is actually linked to the earth, to Mother Gaia, right? And the further away you get from the earth, you basically lose your life force. It's an idea. I don't think there's any science to back this up. But some people have speculated that human consciousness or the human spirit is generated somehow or tied to the earth. And if you were to go out into deep space, you would basically die. You know, your consciousness or your spirit would just fade out and you die. So is that something which would start to become apparent if you went to the moon? You know? There's an episode of The X-Files. I still love The X-Files, right? The first 5 seasons in particular. My favorite series of all time. But there's an episode in The X-Files, I think it's in season 1, called Space. Check out the episode called Space of The X-Files season 1. And that's about a former astronaut who now works for NASA in mission control. And when he was in space, he basically got possessed by some type of space spirit. And this spirit has been controlling him to sabotage space missions. Just to give the whole plot away. But it's very, very creepy and interesting if you watch that episode. Because he's obviously back on Earth and this mysterious space spirit controls his actions and inhabits his body and gets him to sabotage rocket launches and all this type of stuff. Very interesting. Indeed, there you go, Striker. That was the video nasties era. That's right, that's what they used to call it, video nasties. Whole bunch of films were banned or refused classification. Yeah. What was the first film that Peter Jackson made? That was some crazy film. Some like horror film that was just bizarre. Was that one of them that was banned? It was certainly classed as a video nasty. But that was one of the most bizarre films I've ever seen. Peter Jackson's first movie. I think it was his first movie. Kyle says, what was the X-Files even about? One of the reasons I like the X-Files so much is because it was about literally everything. It was about literally everything. The X-Files covered religion, spirituality, aliens, government, deep state conspiracy, cryptids, mythology, MK Ultra type stuff. Witchcraft, everything. That's one of the reasons I liked the X-Files so much, is because it kept you intrigued by throwing different concepts and different ideas and different topics at you every episode and every season. So it was about damn near everything, right? It was about a couple of FBI agents that would investigate weird stuff. All manner of weird stuff. Debiarka says X-Files was kind of like Black Mirror. D-Man says nothing like Black Mirror. Action Popcast says, didn't the Bolger Killers blame Child's Play 3 for the sick actions? I remember it being, I don't think they necessarily blamed it, but they reenacted a scene from Child's Play 3. That's right. Or they allegedly reenacted a scene from Child's Play 3. You definitely shouldn't be letting kids watch horror movies, right? Crimson Jackal says Brain Dead was the Peter Jackson film. D-Man says it launched Gillian Anderson's career. Paul Kirby says the most compelling alien non-human encounter I saw was the 2004 Nimitz Carrier Group case. off the west coast of the US. So many credible witnesses and data, even footage. Look, Vinder Singh says, I enjoyed the Outer Limits. So did I. That was also in the 90s. I mean, the original Outer Limits may have been, I don't know, the 50s or something. But yeah, the 90s Outer Limits, I also like that, yeah. The X-Files and the Outer Limits. Matchday says, watch the episode called Squeeze. That's about Tombs, right? I've seen every episode of the X-Files they've made. I've got all the X-Files, even up to season 11 and the movies on my hard drive, which I got with me. So I'm an X-Files fanatic. I love the X-Files. Now let's switch up the visuals here. Yeah, Tombs. That's right. There were 2 episodes about Tombs. What was his first name? It began with an E. But he was creepy as hell, that's right. Kylie says everything had great music intros in the 90s and even more so in the 80s and 70s. I mean, the theme music in the 70s and 80s was just iconic. It's like every show had phenomenal theme music. Even if the show weren't that good, the theme music was always fantastic. Matchday Football says, know the guy who stretched and squeezed through air vents. Yeah, that's the guy. Tombs. His name began with an E. Something Tombs. Eugene Tombs is his name. And there were 2 episodes about Tombs. The first one was Squeeze. The second one might have actually been called Tombs. But yeah, there were 2 episodes. I can't remember if they were both in season 1. I think they actually were. Yeah, I think both episodes to do with Tombs were in season 1. Eugene Tombs. No, it weren't Victor, it was Eugene. Eugene Tombs. He was some kind of weird mutant who needed to consume human livers for the bile, and that's what made his eyes glow yellow and whatnot in order to survive, and he lived a ridiculously long life. So some of my favorite X-Files episodes would be Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. That's one of my favorite episodes. Tombs, definitely. Is it the Erlenmeyer Flask? That's another one of my favorite episodes. Wet Wired, I like that episode for some reason. Wet Wired is good. Quagmire is kind of a quirky, entertaining episode about a Loch Ness Monster type creature. Have I seen the film Hereditary? I haven't. I think somebody mentioned it in a previous stream. Ben Wilson says, slightly off topic, but has anyone seen Apocalypto? I watched it last night and it blew my mind. Great film. Yes, I've seen Apocalypto. It is a good film, directed by Mel Gibson. It's one of the few non-English language films that I was able to watch from start to finish without feeling fatigued by the fact I had to read subtitles. Because truth be told, the story is told mostly visually, So you don't really need to keep up with what they're saying a lot of the time. Did I ever watch Twin Peaks? No, I never watched Twin Peaks. I used to watch random stuff that my parents would watch, like MASH, Falcon Crest, Dallas. My mom used to watch Falcon Crest and Dallas. The Fall Guy, Manimal. You remember Manimal? Lukvinda? That was from the 70s or 80s, Manimal. It was about some guy who somehow was able to shapeshift into different animals at will. And I always remember one episode of Manimal where somebody was sinking in quicksand and he shapeshifted into a snake, like a python or something, to pull them out of the quicksand. Yeah, Manimal. The 80s was full of weird stuff. The Equalizer with Edward Woodward. How about that for an iconic theme tune? Nighthawk. Knight Rider, obviously. Indeed, Debyaka, that's quick thinking. Shape-shifted into a python to pull somebody out of quicksand. Street Hawk. Yeah, Street Hawk, not Nighthawk. Thank you for correcting me. Street Hawk, not Nighthawk. That's right. Street Hawk. It's about the motorcycle guy. And what was the helicopter one? Was that Air Thunder? Was it called Air Thunder? That also had an iconic theme tune to it. I swear it was Air Thunder. Yeah, Edward Woodward is a crazy name. Airwolf. Thank you. Airwolf. There you go. Not Air Thunder. Airwolf. Yeah, that's the helicopter one. You wonder why his parents would do that to him. His surname is Woodward. Why would they call him Edward? Edward Woodward. Alexander says, Grot Bags from the 80s still scares me. Grot Bags and who was the Scarecrow? Wurzel Gummidge and Grot Bags. Yeah, the A-Team, another iconic theme song or theme tune. Kyle says, thoughts on Damazion Van Hooter. I actually did a video about him, a film study about him on my Patreon page. And to be honest, I'm not impressed. He looks very, 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 very green. I mean, he's going to need years of work before he's even worth talking about, to be honest. All sorts of holes in his game and just way, way off the pace. A couple of fights back, he went absolutely life and death with some little Mexican guy and looked terrible in the process. So, yeah, way, way, way off. Way off, that young man. But I wish him all the best. Banana Man. Oh, yeah. Banana Man, Danger Mouse, Super Gran. Edward Scissorhands. That was one of the weirdest films ever, wasn't it? Starring, was it Johnny Depp as Edward Scissorhands? What was that all about? Was that a Tim Burton movie? I'm pretty sure it was. Edward Scissorhands. I'm not sure whether they still do this, but back in the days, they used to do PORN versions of mainstream movies. And so when Edward Scissorhands came out, there was a PRON version called Edward Penis Hands. I never actually watched it, but I knew about the existence of it. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, Thundercats, that's a classic, obviously. Oh, for real? Look, Vinder Singh says early Freddy Krueger was in V. Was he really? V was a television series with these like reptilian aliens in it. Was Freddy Krueger? Is that what you're talking about? Look, Vinder, the television series V, and Freddy Krueger was in that? Or do you mean the actor rather than the character? Big up Super for the super chat. He says, as boxing is a passion of yours, and you've had big aspirations, how did you cope with retiring or quitting from the sport? Any advice on dealing with it and moving on psychologically? So, because I've always had, I'm going to say, multiple talents, boxing was my first love, and it's what I focus most of my energy on achieving something in. I didn't fall into a deep depression or anything like that. I was disappointed, but like I say, I've always had so many other talents and interests. I held on to it for a long time, well into my 30s. I was like, I'm going to do this, and at some point you just have to let go. So, no, I didn't fall into any kind of deep depression because I've always had ambitions even beyond boxing. So, just to give you an insight into my mind as a kid, how ambitious or delusional I was. Growing up as a kid, I used to think to myself, I'm going to be heavyweight champion. I'm also going to be the fastest man in the world. Beat the 100-meter world record. So I'm simultaneously going to be the heavyweight champion, 100-meter world record holder, the strongest man in the world as well, and I'm going to be a successful rapper. And I thought I was going to be an actor as well. So even when I was a teenager, I really believed all this stuff, right? So, but you know what they tell you, aim high. Because when you aim high, even if you don't achieve all the things that you want to achieve, you'll at least get further than you would if you didn't have any ambition at all. So I was very, very ambitious from a young age and, developed certain talents and whatnot. And boxing was just one of them. So although I was disappointed that I didn't get to pursue a professional boxing career, I wasn't that worried, if that answers the question. But big up, Super, for the super chat. Okay, you're talking about the actor, Robert Englund. Oh, is it Eglund or England? The guy that played Freddy Krueger, the original guy. Okay, so it was the actor, not the actual character. Alexander says, do you think Moses will be better off fighting 15 journeyman fighters a year or two, top 30 fighters at this stage? I think the most important thing for Atama right now is activity. And I do think, I said this in the stream the other day, they're stifling his development by waiting for a big name opponent. Just get him out against the journeyman for now. You can fight a big name opponent early next year. Just keep him active. Big up Jimmy. He's cooking. What are you cooking, Jimmy? Kyle says, I thought I had mad ambitions. Debiaka says, I achieved a goal in life a couple of years ago. I've been lost since. And that's the thing with a lot of people. And I want to say it might be more prevalent or more acute with men. We need to have goals as men. Do you know what I mean? We need to have goals. And if we don't have goals, that's when depression can come in and feeling like you're not needed, and all that kind of business. So to have goals, to set your mind on something, to have ambitions can actually be helpful for your mental health, right? And I've always had goals. I've always had ambitions. There's always been something I wanted to achieve. It hasn't been one thing. It's been multiple things. So when the boxing didn't work out, I had loads of other things that I wanted to achieve anyway. Because when I was a kid, I dreamed about becoming heavyweight champion, but I also dreamed about what I would do after being heavyweight champion. I would literally have conversations in my head where I'm, playing out the interview that I give in the ring after becoming undisputed. I'm now going to turn my hand to my rap career or acting or my athletics career, where I'm going to pursue the 100 meters and become the fastest man in the world and also the strongest man in the world. So becoming heavyweight champion in my mind as a kid was not the pinnacle. It was just one of the many things that I expected to achieve. A big up D-Man, he says, and big up Rich Franklin. Yeah, if we can smash that like button. D-Man says, Atama said he didn't enjoy boxing. Hopefully he doesn't fall into the trap like Jared Anderson. Big up D-Man. Yeah, hopefully not. Linkage says, Atama versus Franklin or Charles Martin would make sense. Those guys have fought big name opponents, right? And so they might price themselves out. As others suggested in previous streams, why not put Atama in there against the guy that Jalalov just fought? Or the guy that just beat Kuzmin? Because I'm sure they would come a lot cheaper than the Franklins, the Charles Martins, the Michael Hunters of the world, and so on. Indeed, Kylie, setting the bar high. I set the bar mad high. Indeed, Debiaka. Yeah, I thought I was going to be like a living superhero, Indeed, Action Popcast. Hatman wanted to be Lennox, Eddie Hall, and Usain Bolt all in one. And Robert De Niro at the same time, or Al Pacino. Yes. Mac B says, Hatman, doing push-ups when you go to the kitchen as a tax at this age shows you are a real one. Ali Usyk played same mind games with themselves. Yeah, you got to. I don't want to have a middle-aged body. Do you know what I mean? And it can easily happen. So I've got to stay on top of things. Make sure that my chest protrudes more than my stomach. Wayne says Moses needs to fight Jalalov and Torres. Torres called him out today. Those fights are going to be difficult to make because of the money that people are going to want. So for now, like I said, I reckon the guy that Jalalov just fought or the guy that just beat, God, what's his name now? Forgotten the Russian guy's name. Old age. Kuzmin, excuse me. Action Popcast says, I just wanted a Mark IV Golf GTI. Yeah, other people didn't have such lofty ambitions as myself. They had more realistic ambitions. But as I said, if you aim crazy high, you may not get there, but you'll get higher than you did if you didn't aim high at all. That's the idea. The box says, how about Makhmudov for a Talma? Again, same problem. When you've got these more recognizable names, they're going to start asking for crazy money. I mean, Jarrell Miller the other day asked for 6 million to fight a Talma. 6 million. So Atama needs to just, in the meantime, when all these people are asking for silly money, take on journeymen and people that are unheralded and unknown just to stay busy. Even if he's blowing people out in a round or two here or there, he needs to be active. He should be fighting at least 4 times a year, minimum, at this stage of his career. At least 4 times a year. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, if you were to design your own fighter, whose attributes would you take for the following categories? Stamina, power, boxing IQ, mental toughness, reflexes, boxing skills, and speed. Okay. Stamina. Who would I take for stamina? I was thinking Usyk, but no, there are smaller fighters that had even better stamina than Usyk. I don't know, Wayne McCulloch or someone for stamina. Wayne McCulloch had crazy stamina. Used to throw a million punches. Power. I go with Mike Tyson because although I don't think he was the biggest puncher of all time in terms of one punch power, he had power in every shot. Left hook, straight right hand, right hook, uppercuts, overarm shots. His power was very consistent through all the different punches. So I'll probably say Mike Tyson for power. Boxing IQ. Might go with a Terence Crawford. Mental toughness. Might pick Usyk again or Muhammad Ali. Reflexes, Roy Jones. Boxing skills. Boxing skills, I might go for a Crawford. Because I feel like he's more versatile than someone like Mayweather, for example. Speed. Probably Roy Jones or Ray Leonard, Mildred Taylor, one of those guys. Big up D-Man. Tony S says Floyd for stamina. Well, Floyd was very low volume, so I wouldn't really pick him for stamina because stamina is tested when you have to throw a lot of punches, more punches than you want to throw. And Mayweather was never really that high volume. He was always a low volume guy. Action Popcast talking about Jarrell Miller demanding 6 million to fight Moses Atama. He said 6 mil, that'll buy a lot of burgers and enhancing potions. Okay, I've got the verify message coming. I had to switch the VPN on and back off again to get rid of this YouTube message telling me to verify because I'm using a VPN. It should be okay now. I'm seeing excellent connection. Hopefully that silly message don't come up again anytime soon. Look, Vinder Singh says the Pazienza story is amazing, from coming back after a broken neck to win a world title. Yeah, crazy. He was literally training with that neck brace thing, that neck cage drilled into his skull. Let me tell you how crazy Vinny Pazienza is. When he had that broken neck, they had to actually drill into his skull to fix that frame on his head, right? And he chose to do it without anesthetic because he didn't believe in anesthetic or whatever for some reason. And he said when they started drilling into his skull, he said the pain was so excruciating, he nearly broke the doctor's arm, or did break the doctor's arm by grabbing his arm when they started drilling into his head without anesthetic. So Vinny Pazienza was crazy as hell. Tony says, what about Jack Johnson for Stamina Man? Fought like 30 rounders. Yeah, but he was very low volume, Jack Johnson. If you ever watch any of those old black and white Jack Johnson fights, he barely throws any punches. He was very defensive. And you really had to pace yourself if you're going to go fight 30 rounds. You know what I mean? Action Popcast says, what are you using to stream OBS? Yep, using OBS. But when the stream gets choppy, it's not about OBS. It's because I have to turn the VPN on periodically, and that causes it to get choppy. And I turn the VPN on because I get these messages from YouTube saying, oh, you need to verify your identity, this and that, because it recognizes that my location is not the UK, and this is a UK channel. Striker says, yeah, that guy is nuttier than a squirrel turd. Yeah. He's got a little bit of Chopper Reed about him. Bit mad. It's not far off, Bexy. It's not far off that now. Iron Luke Partridge. Okay, Lenny Boxing says, May versus Pac will always be huge. Debiaka says, any Google stuff is hell for global nomads. Big up the overtrained. He said, Vlad, got to be up there for power in all shots. Carries late too. Well, he had power in the straight right hand and the left hook. But how many uppercuts have you ever seen Vlad throw? How many right hooks have you seen him throw? So he had power in two shots, but he really didn't throw uppercuts, didn't throw body shots, didn't throw hooks with the right. He was either a straight right or a left hook. Mike Tyson could literally get power in everything. Power in the jab, uppercuts, hooks, straight shots, overarm shots, everything. Linkage says most super fights are usually underwhelming. That's true. Because most super fights these days anyway, over the past few decades, tend to happen when both guys are veterans. You know, when they're like cagey vets. They don't tend to happen when the guys are in their primes. I was just trying to kill a mosquito there and I missed. That's what the clapping was all about. Damn mosquitoes, man. Big up D-Man for the super chat. He says, who would be your top 5 body punchers? Mike McCallum would be in the top 5. I put Mike Tyson in there. I put Joe Frazier in there. I put Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. in there. Is that 4? Who else am I going to pick? Tyson, Frazier, McCallum, Chavez Sr. One more. Any of you guys want to suggest somebody? Who's a all-time great body puncher I'm not thinking of? Yeah, maybe Caballero could enter that list potentially in future if he continues to succeed. But right now, I couldn't put him up there with the guys I just mentioned. Who's a 5th? Racking my brains right now, thinking of lower weight classes. Hearns. Yeah, Hearns was a good body puncher. His left hook to the body was beautiful. Yeah, why not? I'll put Hearns in there. I'll put Hearns in there as the number 5. Yeah, I'll put Hearns in there as the other guy. Hearns was a great body punch. That left hook to the body was wicked. Wicked shot. Yeah, I'll put Hearns in there. The overtrained says Spence. Spence was a good body puncher too, yeah. But I'll put Hearns above Spence. Somebody mentioned Ricky Hatton. I'll put Hearns above them guys as a body puncher because his body punches were so powerful. When he'd whip the left hand to the body in, he'd break people in half with it. And he was consistent too. See, it's not often that you get a big, tall, lanky guy like that throws a lot to the body. But Hearns threw loads to the body. He was very, very consistent with that left hook to the body. And he'd just cripple you with it. Snap you in half. So, yeah, I'd say Hearns would be in the top 5. He was a great body puncher. And that left hook to the body would always set up the straight right hand. He'd hit you with so many lefts that he'd be dying for the right. Paul Kirby says, isn't Luke Partridge a hype job? Who did he really perform impressively against other than that other hype job, Wilder and mediocre White? Well, Klitschko. I personally very rarely use the term hype job because I think it's a bit like simplistic to describe somebody as that. In most cases, in some cases it may be totally appropriate, but for the most part I don't tend to use the word hype job. I would say that most popular fighters are overhyped by a certain section of the public. So I'd say Tyson Fury is very overhyped by his fans because they were so carried away after he beat Dillian Whyte. They were calling him the greatest heavyweight of all time. So way overhyped, but when people use the term hype job, the inference is that the person isn't very good. And Tyson Fury is good. He's a very good fighter. But as is the case with so many popular boxers, the fans just go way overboard. You know, his fans just go way overboard with how highly they rate him and how good they claim he is. Trolls are bad says he showed up versus Usyk despite losing. Indeed. He doesn't get stage fright, Luke Partridge. He's a very good, big occasion fighter. He's one of these guys that tends to underperform if he's fighting somebody that he expects to knock over in a couple of rounds. Whereas when he's in there against somebody formidable, he usually steps up to the plate. And even though he did lose to Usyk twice, he gave it a good go, particularly in the first fight. Striker said Sylvester Stallone and Joe Rogan also said Partridge was the greatest of all time. Two geniuses there. Yeah, I remember Stallone saying it. He said there's nobody in any era that could beat you, Tyson. I remember he was on some kind of satellite call or whatever, or FaceTime. I'm showing my age here. He's calling that a satellite call. FaceTime with Partridge, and he told him, yeah, no. He says, you know the way Stallone talks. He was like, yeah, trust me, I know. I was around during the Ali era. Nobody in the history of heavyweight boxing could have ever beaten you. That was after the Dylan White fight. It got so ridiculous after that Dylan White fight. The stuff people were saying about Partridge. Totally ridiculous. Super says, I lose brain cells whenever Rogan talks about boxing. Mark B says, I watched the video with Wardley saying he is ready for Usyk and that he is not the same fighter he was 7 years ago when they trained together. Do you know how good he did against Usyk? I got no idea. I can't imagine he did very well. But that's the fight that should happen next. It should be Usyk defending against Fabio Wardley. Yeah. If Usyk is serious about carrying on until he's 41, well, that's the next challenge right there. Do I expect Usyk to win easily? Yes. But I expected Joseph Parker, at least if he came in the mid-240s, which he didn't, to beat Fabio Wardley easily on the scorecards. So Wardley's proved me wrong a bunch of times before. Who knows? Maybe if he fought Usyk, he'd prove me wrong as well. The point is, he's earned his shot. And as heavyweight champion, you're supposed to fight your mandatories. Even if the mandatory isn't the most, the greatest perceived threat by the public, doesn't matter. He's your mandatory. So if you want to build a deep resume, you fight your mandatories. And Fabio Wardley is next up, so I think that's what Usyk should do if he insists on carrying on. I think Usyk should retire, but like I say, if he insists on carrying on and he's going to hold on to them belts, he needs to fight Wardley next. Triple R says, the only X-Files episode I remember that creeped me out as a kid was the episode about bugs that suck your blood and body fluids in season 1. Scully almost dies, but they somehow bring her back. Yeah, that's an interesting episode. So, to give away the whole story, the whole plot, Mulder and Scully, two FBI agents, are sent to some woodland in the United States somewhere, some big forest, where a bunch of, like, lumberjacks, or however you describe them, have gone missing. So they're sent there to investigate. And it turns out that because they've been cutting down all these ancient trees, which are like hundreds and hundreds of years old, they've released these tiny, like, green flying parasites into the woods. And these things basically suck all they swarm. There's like millions of them in these clouds, and they swarm and they suck all the moisture out of your body. So you end up like a shriveled prune or something. But they only come out at night. They're like bioluminescent, like glowing green and whatnot. Can't remember what that episode's called. That's it. Bad Taste. Yeah, I thought the name of the Peter Jackson movie that somebody else said it was didn't sound familiar to me, or it didn't sound like it was that. Yeah, Bad Taste is the movie I was talking about. Bad Taste. That is definitely the movie I was talking. Yes, that's the one. Bad Taste. That was one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. Bad Taste. Truth Channel says big cringe. The Overtrain says Bexy Lowit. Look, Vinda says, did Mulder ever, I guess you meant to say bang Scully? Yes, he did in the end. Yeah, he had a kid. He did bang Scully in the end. I can't remember what season it was. It might have been like season 7 or season 8 or something. Yes, Darkness Falls. That's the episode. That's right. With the little green insects that swarm and suck the moisture out your body. That's right. D-Man says, I didn't realize Mulder came back. Yeah. Mulder and Scully are in season 11, which came out, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago or something. D-Man says, I stopped watching after his actor left. Yeah, he left for a bit and then came back. But it was really all over by then anyway. Because the ones where he came back, he looked so old and haggard and he doesn't have the same energy anymore. And not really worth watching the X-Files after maybe season 6. Season 7, okay, but season 8, 9, 10, 11, it's rubbish. Yeah, that's right. T-1000 stepped in for a bit. The guy that played Terminator 2. The liquid metal Terminator. Have you ever seen the movie Magnolia? Slow but amazing? I don't think so. I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it. That's the actor's name, yes. Robert Patrick. Big up Moro's, man. Gorguga says Naked Lunch was weird. Don't think I've seen that. Paul Kirby says the greatest Terminator actor of all time. Lakvinda Singh says, watch The Cube. Is that on Netflix? I think I might have seen that on Netflix scrolling through. Action Popcast says, I think Liam Cameron is a brilliant character. He's another one alongside Isaac Lowe who looks like a member of the Amish community. Man looks Amish. It's not just the beard, it's the shape of his face. The only thing that kind of detracts from Liam Cameron looking Amish is like the gold teeth or silver teeth, whatever he's got in there. But he's got an Amish face. Have I seen the documentary they did with him and his friend? I don't think so. Okay, The Cube is an old movie from the 90s. Still might be on Netflix, because I swear I've seen The Cube, that movie name, pop up somewhere. One of them streaming platforms. Moraz Men says, what the hell is an Amish face? The face of somebody from the Amish community. Amish face. Liam Cameron looks like one of the characters that Jim Carrey plays in a series of unfortunate events. You know, the fisherman, Captain Sham? Like Liam Cameron looks like Captain Sham from a series of unfortunate events. Not the TV series, the movie with Jim Carrey. His face looks like that. Alexander says, Lennox or Calzaghe, who is Britain's best post-war fighter? I'll put Lennox above Calzaghe in terms of the guys he beat and so on and so forth. I mean, yeah, Calzaghe beat Roy Jones and Hopkins. Hopkins was his best win, really. Roy Jones was totally washed when he fought him. Hopkins was a really good win. Really good win. Oh, wow. Triple R says, that's hilarious because someone asked Liam Cameron, who would play you in a movie? And he replied, Jim Carrey. Is that right? Yeah, I did used to like watching Jim Carrey movies back in the days. Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, The Cable Guy, Liar Liar. Jim Carrey was the man back in the days. He was like the top comedy actor, and I like him way better than any of the comedy actors these days. These days, they got people like Kevin Hart. I mean, Kevin Hart's not that funny, people. Do any of you guys find Kevin Hart funny? The Truman Show, yup. D-Man says, do they play a lot of Amapiano in Zambia? Yes, they do. They also play their own music a lot, probably a bit more than they play Amapiano. Is their own music, I don't know, or I've forgotten what their own music is called because they have a name for it, but they play that more than they play Amapiano, their own music. But they do play Amapiano a lot as well, yeah. Yeah, the mosque. Somebody stop me and all that. Yeah. Yeah, I've never found Kevin Hart funny at all. Back in the days, there were so many good comedy actors. You know, in the 70s and 80s, you had Richard Pryor. He was a great comedy actor. He was always like bewildered in every movie. Richard Pryor. You had the guy that played in Naked Gun. Was he called Leslie Nielsen? He was a fantastic comedy actor. Eddie Murphy, of course, was a great comedy actor. Yeah, I loved Eddie Murphy in obviously Coming to America, Boomerang, Trading Places. Afro Jam says, any dancehall, because Zimbabwean makes a lot of dancehall. I haven't heard any dancehall here. Cedric the Entertainer's a pretty good comedy actor as well. He was actually in a series of unfortunate events with Jim Carrey. He was quite funny in that, actually. Cedric the Entertainer. Playing alongside Jim Carrey, yeah. Gene Wilder was a great comedy actor. That's right, Lugvinda. Yeah, Gene Wilder was hilarious too. Him and Richard Pryor acted in so many movies together. They were like a great double act. Stir Crazy was one of them. Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. Big up Action Popcast. He says, happening, I'm out. Bedtime in the UK. Thanks for the great stream. Big up Action Popcast. Bernie Mac, yep. Steve Martin. Yeah, Steve Martin was great. John Witherspoon, legend. John Candy. There were so many great comedy actors. These days, it's like there's nobody. Brewster's Millions, of course. Andy Hall says, Leslie Nielsen was a serious actor until Naked Gun. I always struggle to take him seriously now when I see those serious roles back, like when he was in Columbo. Was he in Columbo? Yeah, I liked The Office with Ricky Gervais. I liked the UK Office a lot more than the American Office. Steve Martin always looked 60, says Tony S. Yep, always had silver hair. Will Ferrell for me has always been very hit and miss. You know, very, very hit and miss, Will Ferrell. Some movies is funny, other movies is like, Very hit and miss, Will Ferrell for me. I always quite liked Owen Wilson as a comedy actor. Thought he was quite good. Never been a big fan of Adam Sandler. Never been a big fan of him. I much preferred Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller's funny. You know, and like Meet the Parents and Zoolander and all that. Yeah, I always like Ben Stiller. He's funny. I think that might have been a high point for Ben Stiller. Was the Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers movies. Where he played alongside De Niro. And actually, Owen Wilson was in one of those as well. I think it was the first one. They used to be a bit of a comedy double act too. Owen Wilson and Ben Stiller used to make a bunch of movies together. They made Meet the Parents together. They were both in Zoolander. And I think there was a few others as well. Yeah, I didn't bother to watch number 2. I expected it to be trash. Zoolander 2. Zoolander 1 was funny. And it was especially funny for me because I worked security in luxury retail. So I was around a lot of the weird people that you get in like the fashion industry because because I worked in luxury retail doing security. So I could relate to a lot of the weirdness in that Zoolander movie, the first movie. Jimmy Nail says, Ben Stiller's dad is in The King of Queens. Yeah, isn't Ben Stiller's dad the guy that played George Costanza's dad in Seinfeld? That's Ben Stiller's dad, isn't it? I was surprised when I found that out because he looks nothing like Ben Stiller. But yeah, I swear it's the guy that played George Costanza's dad in Seinfeld is Ben Stiller's dad. Yeah, Robert De Niro was hilarious in Meet the Parents. He was fantastic in that. They played off each other perfectly, De Niro's character and Ben Stiller's character. Yeah, I agree, Alexander. Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor was a brilliant combo. Timeless. Richard Pryor was always like wide-eyed and neurotic. That's the character he played in like every movie. It's like wide-eyed, neurotic individual, basically playing himself. But always funny. Look, Vinda says Mulder's in Zoolander. Is he? In the first Zoolander, Mulder's in that? Or are you talking about in Zoolander 2? There were loads of people in the X-Files, actors who went on to become famous after the fact. Yeah, See No Evil, Hear No Evil. That was another Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor movie. But for example, Jack Black is in an episode of the X-Files. I forget what the episode is called. Can you guys hear me again? All right, you guys can hear me. Yeah, went through a little bit of turbulence there. We're back. That's right. Johnny Depp was in Nightmare on Elm Street. Correct. All right, peeps. Going to shut this one down now. I think it seems like a good time in case we get any more turbulence. So let's touch down. I'd like to shout everyone out for joining the conversation. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Gaz, 4Fox, D-Man, Matt Borgerson, Angelica, Super. Big up, big up. And as I say, thank you to all of you for joining the conversation. It's been great. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.